Hi. We're ready to begin. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Hillary Fisher Groban, Senior Director of Brand Insights and Comms at TripAdvisor, and we are here to talk about Black travel today.
No.
All right.
Tomorrow.
All right. And tomorrow. And tomorrow. So joining me on stage is an awesome set of thought leaders. We've got Vaughn and Buff, the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Group Black. My colleague, Shana Walker, the global head of equity, diversity, and inclusion at TripAdvisor. And we're really here today to talk about an awesome piece of research that we've just launched together. I want to give a note that, unfortunately, our third panelist couldn't join, so if you're looking for her name on the screen, unfortunately had some travel delays. We know them well, but we're excited to get into it. So our Black Travel Today report was a detailed study that looked at the travel preferences and behaviors of Black travelers in the U.S. Now, this is a $100 billion demographic. That is the annual spend of Black travelers traveling in the U.S. today.
Say it one more time.
$100 billion demographic. This is super appealing, whether you're in travel or just a brand looking to get in front of it. There's really a lot of takeaways for everyone in this study. So I wanted to share a few highlights before we get into our conversation. The report, it's live now, you can check it out, and it really centered around 4 of the drivers for Black travelers when picking destinations. They're looking for what we're calling the 4 C's. We've got culture-driven, comfortable, curated, and communal. We felt like these are really actionable takeaways that advertisers, brands, anyone really looking to connect with this community can take away something from that. Now, a little bit of key findings. 70% of Black travelers are more inclined to consider destinations that visibly promote inclusivity. So this is a choosy demographic. There's specific considerations here. There's specific joys of traveling that we uncovered. And there's also a lot of real life concerns. We saw concerns around safety. 44% of Black travelers are prioritizing the cultural and racial diversity of a destination when assessing if it's just safe for them to go on a trip, bring their family somewhere, go there with their friends. So this is a really important set of aspects to understand. We also saw a lot of valuable insights for cities, urban areas, fostering a sense of community, and there's a lot of ways we can all get involved. So I wanted to start with a really quick little icebreaker here. It's maybe the toughest question. Favorite trip you've been on?
Ladies first. But can I just ask for somebody from Group Black to just ask them in the back to maybe just quiet down a little bit? Thanks. Not you guys, not Cavell. In the back of the stage here. Sorry, go ahead.
Favorite trip. Well, I don't do well with favorites. And I also feel like each trip is different, right? So I had a 3-week trip to Bali in Australia, trip of a lifetime. I went with a girlfriend of mine. We did not get on each other's nerves, which was surprising.
What did she say?
She agrees. She agrees.
You're still friends.
You can fact check that later. But it was kind of like the difference of the cities, the slowness, the busyness. It was the $5 massages in Bali. Like, it was a trip of a lifetime. But then there's also smaller trips, or I'm a big carnival goer, so that's also a pretty exciting time. But yet the smaller trips are also cool too, right? You get that authentic food or whatever the case is. So it's hard for me to narrow it down to one, but I feel like every place I've gone has been pretty special. That might be a cop-out answer, but I think it's a good one still.
What she said. It's so weird because the whole week I've actually been moderating, so it's weird to be on the panel.
Be on the other side.
Be asking questions. I'm like, I get to ask you the questions. I spent my whole life traveling, and I think that it's interesting because the travel I remember the most, when I look at the study that came back, is the travel that I remember the most is the travel that either made me feel like we belong there, or, I mean, safety definitely, but I think also allowed for a cultural experience. And I think that's, I think about, I've done like 20 days across the Yucatan with my dad. We shot a documentary with a father-son. We did Africa, South Africa, all the way up to Egypt for 19 days. I've done a lot of that. The one trip, though, that sticks out in my mind is, it was Mexico, but it was with my mom. It was a family. It was a family trip. And we had a chance to experience culture. We ate Mayan food. We went, I mean, it was, and I think that the places that allow you safe in all those pieces, but also feel cultural relevance, to me, the interesting stuff that sticks out in my life.
Thank you for sharing. We're going to get into a few questions now. So more than any other consideration, we saw that Black travelers consider the cultural or racial diversity of a destination to determine if it's safe for them. Not even going to have a fun time, but if it's safe for them. Vaughn, I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on why this sense of cultural connection and safety is so crucial for Black travelers.
This is going to be off color, but I'm going to tell this story. So I was in a certain place. I won't specifically talk about where it was. It was, my wife's from Finland. So, she's like the further extreme from me as you could get. It's like, and so, but we were with friends and we walk in to this, it was a store that had a Confederate flag on it. And it's actually my college roommate who was like, we should go in. I'm like, dude, this is not going to turn out well. Like, call me crazy. So we walk in and the guy's like, hey boy. I was like, wow, this is authentic. This is really like, this is legitimate. But I think that at the end of the day, one of the big pieces from a travel perspective, in order to make sure that you feel safe and wanted and welcome and all those kind of things, is clearly not that, but is making sure that everybody around you that's traveling with you is having a shared experience, and that you all are experiencing it together. And what I thought was interesting about the study was that most people gravitated to destinations that were recommendations. And so we forget how important it is for not just us to, but the word of mouth of, oh, I enjoyed this, I felt welcome, I felt like this place was for me, and you would also enjoy it too, and how big recommendations are for this community. And I think it was 23% more than for any other group that was, that had responded, which I thought was, because we don't know where we're welcome, where we're not. And this looked at the Black traveler, but I'm willing to bet that the same exact thing exists for the female traveler, for the Asian American traveler, for the Hispanic traveler. And then the other piece we talked about backstage, and then I'll shut up, is to the point where we even begin to, like Black Ski Week, like we coin things so that we know this is for us. But more than that is that the economic impact as a result of that, we're like, oh, that's for us. Well, that's what Black Ski Week sounds like me. That's where I'm going. But the economic impact that must have to those mountains is huge. So we forget that, when you create a space for people to feel comfortable, confident, connected, community, that you're going to benefit economically. And that's some of the pieces I think we forget. I'm sorry, I talked too long, but I'm going to hand it.
That's great. We're going to turn to Shana now. And I do think it's connected. We saw that 70% of Black travelers will prefer to visit a destination that visibly promotes inclusivity. So this is an active step. This is something you have to, really put forward into the world through your marketing strategies. Shana, what role do you think travel guidance companies, platforms, let's say TripAdvisor, should play in fostering a more inclusive travel environment?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think when you're thinking about fostering an inclusive environment, there's a role that the traveler plays, right? But there's also the role that the destination, the accommodation, the restaurant, you name it, has as well. I think we do a really great job of curating content that really highlights various things, whether it's cultural norms, legal rights in those respective areas, local sensitivities that you should be aware of. Also, what are some respectable tourism practices? I also think it's important for us to highlight those destinations that are inclusive, right? Because to your point, that's where folks will gravitate to. And I think if you are actively promoting inclusivity, you should benefit from that. I also think that, promoting lesser known destinations, it's not that they're not good, but we have a role in highlighting that as well, and kind of sharing the wealth, right? I feel like the lists always have Italy. There's always kind of like these common places, right? But there are also beautiful places in Africa. There's beautiful places in South America, right? And so it's really important to highlight those as well. We also are very big on community, right? So partnering with local businesses, partnering with communities, because that's where the authenticity comes from, and having those cultural experiences. I think also accessibility, regardless of how you identify accessibility, is really important. So if there are destinations that are accessible, right, we want to make sure that we're highlighting those features. We want to make sure that our site as well is also accessible. And then also from a review standpoint, right, how do we help travelers to find places that are accessible to them? So including that in reviews. So all of those things that I mentioned, TripAdvisor, for example, happens to do those as well. But I think the other one is trust and safety. I don't think we can talk about inclusivity without trust and safety. And so whether it's providing, resources, guidance, guidelines, et cetera, around that as well, I think is super important and a pivotal role that travel guidance platforms should play.
Yeah, absolutely. The verification and the trust that this place is going to be safe. These people have gone, they've said it, they've given it a 5-bubble review, they've given it a 4-bubble review. I can trust it. We take that super seriously. There's a whole team actively working on that 24 hours a day. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. And again, we did see that, as you said, 25% of Black travelers, younger Black travelers, are turning to travel influencers, they're turning to content creators on safe travel destinations. That's definitely new. And we saw that, like I said, more so with younger Black travelers than the general population of Black travelers that we surveyed. So, Vaughn, in your experience, how are travel brands, non-travel brands, how can we tap into this important community?
I mean, just Group Black, we're good. We just launched Excellence. Where's the TV show? Where's the Black travel? We got to show that we're ready. That's, right out of the gate. You know what I think, though, is the most, is a real opportunity. And look, I feel very blessed to have traveled on the dime of corporate America. And I've lived in, I think, every continent: China, Brazil, India, Europe, South Africa. I think literally every continent. And there's very few cities on planet Earth that are the majors that you can name that I probably haven't visited. And I feel it transformed my life to the point where first of all, I'll tell you a funny story. So the very first corporate travel trip I did, I was 21 years old. I went to Malaga, Spain, and I was there for an hour, and it was Societe Generale, and it was when banks were just blowing money, and I was like, corporate travel's amazing. Like the next week they were like, go to Dearborn, Michigan. I was like, corporate travel is the worst. Like what? And I just, we had global businesses, and I've been around the world, and I've spent most of my time on the road versus even, even when pandemic hit, I said, the one place I've never visited is my home. So I was just happy to actually be home. But travel impacts the way we see the world so much. And I think that many travel brands look at travel as like, okay, price and commodity and that component. And it's so much bigger than that. When my younger brother got to college, he's like 7 years younger than me, he wanted to study abroad in China. Well, I spent every dollar I had saved to allow him to go to China because I knew what it was like for 7 years to have seen the world. And I think that what I love about the work that we're doing is that you're trying to understand what sits underneath the traveler and the insight around the traveler. But the other piece that you sit on is like, you change people's minds. And to me, that's where I think travel brands have an opportunity, and especially when you're young. Like when you're young, it's like, how do I open your mind up? I've seen opulence at its highest level, and I've seen poverty at its worst. And the funny thing is, I actually worked in travel for many years. Visit Jamaica.com. Come to Jamaica and feel all right. One love. You guys know it, right? So I worked on that, and I remember we got there. The first meeting we had, we jumped out for the Prime Minister's office, and you could smell nothing but weed. And they were like, "It's the national flower." I was like, "Okay, we're not going to put that in the campaign, but got it." But so I worked in tourism, but every time I get off a plane, even now, it still makes me realize that I'm entering into a new world that I could experience. I just went to Munich the other day, and I wasn't, the other day, I make it sound like I just jump on. But anyway, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever. And I hadn't been to Munich in a long time, and I love Germany. And it just makes you remember, like, how much you can learn from people's experiences. And you guys sit on top of that. And I think the answer specific to your question is how do you inspire a young generation to explore humanity, not even the world, just how humanity operates. And to me, that's what travel represents. So anyway.
I love that. That's beautiful. And that's certainly what we're trying to do at TripAdvisor. It's completely formative. It changes your perspective forever, those early trips.
And providing those things where Black travelers or cultural groups understand that they're going to experience that. Like, how many, this whole new, and I'm so sorry, this is all, the rest of it is all you, and I'm going to be quiet. But even going back to Africa, most people are going back to Ghana. They're not from Ghana. But what they're trying to experience is, what is Africa like? What does it mean to be connected back to their roots? And so even stuff like that, it can be transformational and ultimately grow the business. And I think is a reinvention moment. Okay, all you, I apologize.
No, I was just going to add in terms of like it being transformative, right? Because let's use Africa. There's been so much, stereotypes or how the media portrays it. And then I think the first time I went was to Senegal, and it's like, this is not what they show you, right?
It's not mud huts?
It's right.
They got cell phones?
There's running water,
Right.
so, and now that's the place that I want to continue going to, right? Because there's so many places. Africa is vast. It is a continent. It is not a country. And I think the more you talk about it, to your point of the word of mouth, people then get their interest, and that's how we just keep the ball rolling. So I think it's important.
I love it.
Travel is important.
Travel's important. And I think then who's shaping those travel experiences is even more important. Who's showcasing those places?
Said TripAdvisor. No, go ahead.
It's important. And
what a coincidence.
Right. Surprise.
I'd love to bring it back to what we can do to ensure that the voices of Black travelers going on those experiences, having that travel experience at TripAdvisor, what are we doing to ensure that Black traveler voices are heard when we're shaping our product offerings, travel experiences?
So I have notes for this question specifically, because there's actually quite a bit that TripAdvisor is doing. And I know that you're the moderator, but I'm going to turn it on you just quickly because we have a brand health tracker that you happen to run. And I think that's important for the audience to know.
I do, one of my hats. So when we're looking at how our brand is doing in market, we are very specific with understanding as many slices of that as possible. And that includes looking along racial lines. It includes looking along different ability lines. Obviously, we're looking at, household income, but all types of demographics. And we're asking questions not like, would you consider using us next time you plan a trip, which is great, consideration is great, but really, is this a brand that is for people like me, is a really important, powerful question for us. And like I said, this is something that's baked into our research that we're running consistently within year to really see, how are we making progress and really seeing in real time growth in certain demographics and really the gaps. And it's allowed us to have those conversations where we sit down and we're like, well, this is where we're at, and where do we go from here? We can start to get some quantifiable targets and set that up in a really actionable way. So yeah, that's one thing we do for sure, is ask, which is nice.
And then kind of like following up in terms of asking research, right? Researching the Black traveler. So since 2020, we've partnered with various organizations, Group Black might be one of them, to really understand the behaviors, the challenges, insights, et cetera, about the Black traveler and others, but we talk about Black travelers, so that's what we're going to focus on here. We also participate in various conferences. I don't know if anyone's going to Afrotech or AdColor. Anyone? I see a few heads. Okay, I'll see you out all there. Well, I'll see you at Afrotech, not at AdColor, but TripAdvisor will be at both. But we like to attend those conferences for the general knowledge, but also we are then able to engage with the demographic that's there. So last year we had an activation at Afrotech where we were able to survey a lot of the attendees to understand what their thoughts were as we were launching our trip planning tool. And so those insights were super helpful for us as we look to iterate on that product. Another one is making sure that we have Black representation in our content, right? So we invite a lot of collaborators to our social media to share from their experience and point of view what it's like to visit X destination or have, whatever experience it is. We also have ERGs, employee resource groups. And so with having, I think we have 7 at TripAdvisor, one of them being Black at, which is specifically for our Black employees who happen to also be travelers, right? So why not share with them what we're thinking about and get their input, get their insights, get their feedback, and incorporate that into our product development that way. We also work with partners like destinations to ensure that their marketing and messages are reaching the right folks, but also the messaging itself is inclusive. And then we also have, again, our travel and safety team. So they're monitoring reviews. And if there is any mention of discrimination, right, we want to highlight that. And that can actually stop them from being eligible for Traveler's Choice Awards and, Best of the Best. They also monitor the media. So if there's any mention of discrimination in the media, they'll put up a warning on that specific business so that travelers can decide, do some additional research on their own to decide if that's a destination that they want to or a business that they want to patron. And then lastly, moving back to the research, we do a lot of research, but I think it's important to talk to the people that you're looking to serve, right, so that they truly are benefiting from your offerings. So our research team does an amazing job of being a part of our product development process. And also, we currently have a TripAdvisor community board, which consists of TripAdvisor users that we can survey to get their input and insights on various things that we're launching. And it's been a general board, but by the end of the year, we will be having various segmentations, right? So specifically for Black travelers, for Asian travelers, LGBTQ plus travelers, Asian, I might be missing another one, but I think also travelers with mobile disabilities. So I think that covers most of it. If not, y'all got the gist.
Right.
But there's quite a few things that we're doing to ensure that.
I'll just, if I can throw one other thing, it doesn't sound like it's necessary, but first I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Sarah on our team, the amazing Sarah, led this and drove this work, and thank you. And in our conversations, I tried to get her to come on the panel, but she refused. Is that I think the other piece of it is that you guys care enough to even ask the question. And so, many companies aren't even asking the question or trying to understand the customer on a deeper level and trying to find ways to connect with the customer. And I know people are like, oh, Vaughn is on his phone, but I'm just reading back some of the stats because I'm just looking at, some of the pieces that came out of it. And the inclusivity questions, just understanding, does inclusivity actually matter? Not like, hey, does price, again, I think most people go to price, they go to premium, they go like, that's kind of where, travel is. And then also understanding really what they care about in terms of, cultural connectivity and representation. I think that those are questions that a lot of people don't ask that. I'm not trying to say, anything about any other travel company, but I can tell you, I again travel a lot, and a lot of companies don't care about that piece. And just the fact that you care and understand that, and the big piece of that is not that you care and understand it, and I joke, some people care about this, but everybody cares about this. But at the end of the day, economic opportunity that's created by taking a moment to recognize differences and be able to deliver products that service those differences is what creates value creation in the marketplace. And the fact that you guys do that, I think is, you should be applauded.
Well, let's do some applause then.
That's applause. That's applause. Let's get it done.
But the other thing I wanted to add, and thank you for that, is I know I spoke a lot about like what TripAdvisor does and how the research and whatnot benefits our products, right? But we're also thinking about the industry. So when we are doing a lot of this research, it does contribute to thought leadership, right? That we're sharing with our partners so that they can take the considerations to mind and hopefully improve what they're doing as well, which I think is really, really important too.
Absolutely. And thank you also. I think we have time for a few more questions. So speaking of things kind of universally loved, we did see that Black travelers are more likely to spend on clothing, hair care, skincare, health, and wellness before a trip. Sounds awesome. How can
It's exhausting.
Exhausting, awesome. But this is a moment to reach this set of really important consumers. So, Vaughn, how should brands think about getting in front of this group before they're planning a trip? Anyone doing a good job? And what are the gaps?
I mean, I show up mostly homeless, so I don't really spend a lot of preparation time before no. I think literally people are like, excuse me, sir. I'm like, no, I'm actually in. I'm legal to fly. Don't worry. One is use Group Black, of course, but two, I think is working with you guys to really focus, and I think that's what we've done with some of, I keep pointing to Sarah, but some of the products and services that we are trying to create. And it's not a shameless plug for us, but I think that it's really about working with you guys to understand what are those deeper insights and then identify those moments and create advertising and content that reaches that. The funniest thing that I find is that we're surprised. We're like, oh my God, when people saw somebody who looks like them in a commercial, they were highly likely to buy. Who would have thought? Like, it's like, is that like, again, you want to reach millennials. I'm not showing, my 90-year-old dad, it's like, so if you know that a moment exists where hair care matters, maybe we focus on a piece of content that talks about hair care. It might just be, when you're driving down the highway, they're not like, hey, it's like McDonald's, eat now. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's like 101 stuff. So I think there's that, but I think the bigger piece to that is that working closely with you guys to identify those insights and that opportunity. And that's, I think, what the marriage of kind of the work that we're trying to do together is, but really, outside of us, but working with you guys to understand what is the deep insights around what the consumer is looking for at that moment. And then how do I create in order to generate that opportunity with the consumer, given the insight that I've learned from you guys. And what I think people forget about TripAdvisor more than anything is that, people are coming to you and you're a trusted brand. You're not, I can't say some of the other companies, but anyway, you're not some of the other companies. You're a company where you're literally an advisor. Like, they're coming to you for advice on how to plan their trip, and that's how they see you guys. And so as a result, what the insights that you guys are able to garner are actually people sharing, their hopes and dreams and wants from this, not just being in a mindset where it's like, okay, I got to be price sensitive, or I'm just looking for, the cheapest hotel and the best bundle deal on a car. So I think that's the answer directly to your question is how do they work with you to understand that insight and then bring that insight to life at the right moment when that consumer's searching?
Love it. I think
am I hired?
You're sold.
Okay,
sold.
done. Let's
Film
go. Let's
it,
get it.
cut it up.
Sorry,
we're running it. We're running it.
TripAdvisor.
Next
Let's
ad.
go.
Awesome. I think we have time. I'm going to do real quick rapid fire. This road is not easy. We're sharing all these
Is
incredible
that a
stories.
part, like road travel? No. Okay, sorry.
It is.
Good job.
It is. So it is hard. It is hard to advocate for resource, headcount, budget to talk about things like this, even to do this research. You have to be advocating. What tips show a little bit of the playbook? How can folks advocate more for marketing product work to support work like this from their stakeholders, their leadership? What have you seen? What works?
Do you want to finish?
I think it starts with the fact that you mentioned the very beginning, right? Like leveraging data is really important. And you mentioned the spending power of this demographic, which maybe you should, I don't know, repeat it one more
$100
time.
billion annually.
Yeah, like
Black travelers in the US.
I can't imagine that not giving you the foot in to continue having the conversation for that, right? But obviously you want to align with business goals. It's like all the things you would do for anything else that you're trying to get off of the ground, right? Like what is the value here? What are the data points? What are we trying to solve for? How is this going to benefit from us? And then using storytelling, if it can pull at people's heartstrings, even better, right? So I don't think that it's any different. I think sometimes when we talk about inclusion, when we talk about it's like you don't know what to do, but it's like use the same principles that you would use for any other business case that you're looking to solve for.
It's got to be quick. Okay, I'm tired of answering this question. Like, if you're not going to make money off of it, I'll do it. I don't care. But I guess my point is, and to give an example, you know, in the acquisition of, so when SNSS was bought, 100,000 people went. If you went last year, over 1 million. It is the first and second largest day of economic generation in the city of New Orleans. It's bigger than Mardi Gras, and it's bigger than Santa. It literally beats Santa. And the point is that the way you make money is investing in underserved, that's where growth comes from, underserved communities. And the fact that we still are asking this question, you know what was an underserved community? China, Brazil, India. But we built economic infrastructure to grow that consumer base, and that's how we grow GDP. This is, if I told you there was a consumer that had $1.7 trillion worth of spending power, but brands index 10%, you go, where? Please show me this mythical consumer. Guess what? That's just the African-American consumer. That's not the $5.7 trillion that exists in what we call the new majority, which is Hispanic, AP, all those pieces. And so for me, it's like, what question are we asking? Is this the question we're really asking? So the business case is easy. The question that we need to ask is the infrastructure in place to unlock that consumerism? And that's basically like when you look at excellence. You know, our launch was, yes, representation does matter. Of course it matters, man. Like, so Black Panther is a great example. You put a black cast, and every one of my friends were like, where are you going to be on Sunday? You better be a Black Panther. Okay, I guess that's what I'm going to. And guess what? It was, and it doesn't alienate. It was the #1 movie to unlock. So that's the question is do we have enough infrastructure to unlock the growth opportunity that sits in front of us? And that's the question we should be asking, not is it a growth opportunity? I mean, we're not idiots. We all know that, man. And that's why I'm tired of that question. So anyway, I didn't mean to answer it that way or close that way, but that's kind of where my head's at. But anyway, thank you. Sorry.
All right, we're ready to get started.
Let's go.
We're not talking about it anymore. Well, I think that is all the time we have. I am so grateful to have shared this stage with you all. This report is live. You can find it now. And huge thank you to our panelists.
Yes.
And I'll see you at the next one. Thank you.
Yeah.